Redditors who were dating someone that went from "I think I want to marry this person" to "I think I need a restraining order." What happened? I was dating a guy who was very sweet in the beginning. After about 6 months he got possessive. He didn't trust me. An example of this was one night I told him I was meeting a friend I used to work with at a bar a block away. We lived in a safe area and it was a short walk. Her name sounded like it could be male or female, but I assured him she was a she. He showed up at the bar while we were there and it made him look very insecure. He began tracking my phone's GPS. I found out when I stopped at a relative's house after work on my way home and he freaked out and called my mom. She actually knew that was where I was and he had a hard time believing I wasn't cheating. The last straw was my first week at a new job. I worked nights and had my phone. I got this long-winded email regarding an innocent comment on a Facebook selfie of me. There were screenshots of it and a huge manifesto about why my buddies online all wanted to take me away from him. After I broke up with him, I got emails for months swinging between apologies and telling me I was the abuser. I got emails telling me he was being dogged. It was insane. I graduated. She wanted to transfer schools. So we moved to a college town where she told me she'd been accepted as a transfer. Turns out she hadn't been accepted. And when she applied, was not accepted. She got a job at Walmart while trying to figure out her next move. After about 2 months she decides we should move to Pittsburgh. She's convinced this will solve all her problems and make her happy. Except we're in a recession and I just got my first good job. I don't want to move. She became abusive. I didn't want to go home. She was constantly negative and on the edge of a screaming fight. I was just avoiding her at the end. We were together 4 years before that. And she was always moody but not abusive. 6 months of that. And she went to her hometown to take a semester at a local school and stay with her parents. I called her 2 weeks later and told her not to come back. It had been like a weight was lifted from me. And I never wanted to see her again. I was young, dumb, and thought I was in love and ignored many red flags. As he got more comfortable around me he let his crazy out. Someone stole his cell phone and he asked me to purchase a shotgun for him so he could go shoot the person who did it. It took me another 1.5 years to leave. I did try breaking up with him but he told me that if I ever tried to break up with him again he'd kill everyone I love and then himself so I'd know what it was like to be alone. That relationship ended in an order of protection against domestic violence. He was nuts. Started dating in high school. Had some ups and downs. But at the time I just chalked it up to us being immature. My last 2 years of college really proved he just had serious issues. When I moved out of state for good it's like a switch flipped and he got extremely possessive and controlling. Wanted all my friends' numbers. Gave me a schedule of when we need to be in communication and if I missed any he was blowing my phone up with threats of suicide. Finally got the restraining order when he showed up to my friend's apartment looking for me. Threatening to call the police because I still had a pair of issues that I didn't even have. That's so crazy. Something very similar happened to me except I was the other side of it. Looking back it's insane to me how I could think the things I was doing were right. But I did them anyways. I'm not sure what happened in that relationship to bring that out of me. But I developed some serious hang-ups that I'm still working to get over today. We were in a long distance relationship for over 3 years and eventually it started to fizzle. She'd tell me to move to the States and drop my college degree, my family and my animals to live as an illegal immigrant and I could just do whatever jobs I could find just to be with her. I told her I needed to wait. She'd get very upset every time I went out with friends and would bombard my Facebook wall with random crap and send me private messages with passive-aggressive insults and threats of suicide. I broke it off with her and moved on. But she kept messaging me asking to be friends. I tried but she'd randomly blow up at me insulting me for ruining her life by making her think she could be loved. I told her she did deserve love and she'd get even more upset. We couldn't talk at all. Last year she messaged me yet again. We broke up in 2013, telling me that I had a legal obligation to marry her since I said I would 5 years ago and therefore she expected me to just fly up there and fulfill my obligation to her. Had to block her. Started out romantic and fun. Looking back, I was a stupid 15-year-old who thought he, 19, just saw me for how mature and sophisticated I was. Wrong. He was a horrible creep. Emotionally and physically abusive, and I was stupid and naive. The last straw was when he asked me to come over with my friends. And when we did, he was doing naked stretching and refused to put clothes on. I was so embarrassed. My friends left and he had some dinner made for me, which we ate, and some alcohol that he had spiked with crushed up oxys. Disclaimer, I was in no way into pills. All I did was smoke weed and occasionally drink. I'll spare you the horrible details, but it was not a good night. I dumped him a few days later after trying to process what had happened. Took me years to finally understand, and he went batshit crazy. Tried to commit suicide. Stalked me. Broke into my house and stabbed my soccer ball and left it sitting on my bed with a giant knife in it. Oh, and he stole my panties and posted photos of him with them in his mouth all over MySpace. Oh, the early 2000s. I sincerely hope he winds up in prison one day, because I know he still has a habit of going for extremely young girls who are too inexperienced to know what the F is up. I'll throw my hat into the ring here. Dated a chick years ago. She was essentially everything I thought I wanted in a girl. She was cute. Funny. Liked just enough things I liked for us to have common interests, but just different enough to show each other new things and experiences. I was heavy into her and she was heavy into. Then things got weird. She started getting jealous of high school friends I'd known way before her, and even went as far as telling me I wasn't allowed to hang out with some of my female friends except for the few she thought were uglier than her. Things got worse. She started getting jealous of inanimate objects like my game consoles and video games, some of which she gave me. It came to a head when my grandmother asked me to watch her dog. She was a tiny hand dog that I adored, and one day I was half asleep and saw her literally kick this tiny dog off my bed, like with her feet. I asked her what the hell her problem was, and she told me that she doesn't like that I give the dog more attention than her. Things got even worse. She would physically abuse me when I did things she didn't like, such as bending my fingers, hitting me in the face, etc. Eventually everything I did she didn't like. After a while I got the courage to dump her, and she tries to tell me she's pregnant to keep me, which is an obvious lie. After that I discovered she'd still stalk my Facebook page, and told some of her friends and mutual friends that I was the abuser. I also learned that when I was away she'd let dudes feel her up and other stuff too. Luckily I've landed a great girl that cares about me and isn't a jealous psycho like she was. The worst version I have of this was a guy that I had been dating, who rammed my truck with a moving van repeatedly at an immigration checkpoint in New Mexico. Well, after dark. He thought it was funny. He'd been behaving badly, but I just thought it was the stress of the move. The aggravated assault by U-Haul is when I decided to break up with him. He stalked me 4 years after that, harassing me at work, which led to me getting fired. I switched from law firms to legal software, and that seemed to make it harder to find me. His stalking ended in blowing up a brick and mortar mailbox with plastic explosives. I think he laid low after that, because the FBI was looking for him. He eventually moved back to California. Years later, an ex-girlfriend of his contacted me about 7 years later when she was settling his estate. She wanted to make sure there weren't any children. Started dating a woman who agreed with me on the idea of being childless. I was 100% certain, and still am, almost 25 years later, that I did not and do not want children. We commenced dating. 2 months into dating, she told me that I had to quit my job that paid very well and get an even higher paying job immediately, if not sooner. That I had to purchase her a large house in Connecticut. At the time she was living in Queens, NY, and I was living in southern Westchester County. And finally, I had to get her pregnant immediately with the first of 10 children she wanted by me. No, she was not kidding at all. I think I invented ghosting in that moment. It was, after all, 1994. How hard did I ghost her? I moved from NY to AZ overnight. I vanished. We're FB friends now, though. She actually ended up following me to AZ. She tracked me down. I had a fairly large internet presence at the time on Usenet. So she was able to get messages to me, and ended up moving 2 hours away to Phoenix. After a few weeks, it was clear that I was not interested in resuming the relationship. She started dating around, met a guy, and later married him. They are by all accounts very happily married. And no kids. This would have been late 1994, early 1995. In 1998, I met the woman that is now my wife of almost 20 years, and moved to Northern California to marry her. I ended up with 2 stepkids. They were 17, 21 at the time, and now I have 3 grandchildren, whom I absolutely adore. So, I sort of bent the rules. I got all the awesome of grandkids without having to actually raise kids myself. My wife, to answer the inevitable questions, is 10 years older than I am. She friended me on FB. There are no hard feelings. We both realized that we would have made terrible spouses for each other. She found who she needed, and I certainly found what I needed. My marriage has been literal bliss. I'm in NorCal and I have to go to work in about 10 minutes. I'll check back to see if there are any additional questions. We were spending a large amount of time together, with me staying at his house several nights of the week. He went mad one day because he said we weren't spending enough time together. He pulled out a notepad and drew up a schedule, outlining in excruciating detail each hour that I would spend with him throughout the week from then on. I distinctly remember sitting there, saying nothing and feeling like I was in the twilight zone. Things got significantly crazier from then on, but this moment always sticks out in my mind. Started dating not long after a previous relationship. At first everything was amazing and I did everything for this girl. For my 21st birthday we went to Alton Towers with 2 of my friends, 1 boy and 1 girl. We stayed over at the hotel. We were all in the same room having a drink and a laugh when suddenly my GF storms out the room for no reason. Rightly so, I follow her back to our room as to ask what's up. Before I can even finish my sentence she punches me square in the face, gets me to the floor and kicks me about 5-6 times. I ask why and it's because I'm apparently always looking at my girlfriend. Anyway, in the morning we set off home and I assume all is well. We drop my friends off and as I pull up to her house she puts her feet on my windscreen and kicks it 3-4 times, cracking it. Not sure why I stayed with her for a month after this, as she scratched at my face repeatedly when I accepted an old school friend on Facebook. I was dating a guy. I really liked him. He was smart, funny, and adventurous. We were getting pretty serious. He pretty much lived at my house. One weekend I went home for my dad's birthday. All of my brothers were home. I have 5 of them. We ate, drank and were merry. One of my sister-in-laws took some pictures and posted them on Facebook with me tagged in them. Got back to my house Sunday evening and my boyfriend was coming over shortly to hang out, spend the night. When he got there he was basically frothing at the mouth. He shoved me and called me a girl. Started pushing me around, ranting about how he had to see me whoring myself all over the internet and hanging on a bunch of guys. I told him they were my brothers. But at that point I was done with him. I told him to get the F out of my house. He took that as an invitation to throw me up against a wall and try to force me to kiss him. My roomie heard the commotion and came out of her room with a bat. Then he made the only good decision he made that day and decided to leave. Kicked in a pantry door and wrecked some drywall on his way out though. I threw all his stuff in a dumpster. He ended up stalking me for years. Showing up drunk at places I'd moved to after we dated. Calling after I'd changed my number. Even texted me on the week of my wedding to ask me to reconsider marrying him instead. Yeah, you crazy F, I want to dump the love of my life for a crazy stalker.